Good evening. So I have a question. So have you guys ever kind of been, out and about, like with out at like school or class or whatever or work, and you realize you forget your phone charger at home?
Talk about
And you feel that pit in your stomach, and then you're like barely sending text messages, and when you do, it's like super quick, emergency, because you don't want your phone to die. Or if you have like an old iPhone, and you know how they keep updating the system, and it like eats your battery. And so like with Peter's phone, I feel so bad for him. So it'll be 100% 1 minute, and then literally within 10 minutes, it's at 1%. We'll stay at 1% for like 3 hours.
Whoa.
So we never understand like the technology in that. But we're always, when we think about that, what do we need to do? We need to charge our phone. Our phone needs power. And it's something that we need, right? We need power. We can't get up in the morning without some sort of power awakening us, getting us up and out of bed, right? And so let's turn to 2 Corinthians.
Come on, Jess.
Chapter 12. And this is a sermon that I pulled some of the stuff from it from, do any of you guys know who Luke Speckman is? Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Luke Speckman is our brother, but he also leads our amazing church in New York City. And excitingly, I don't know if you guys just saw that, the New York City just hit its 200th member just this last Sunday. So it's been really incredible just seeing how God is like expanding that church like crazy. But with that, he did this sermon. It's called Power in Weakness. And if we turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 12, let's start in verse 7. And this is Paul speaking right here. And it says, "Therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me." Well, so if we see here, he's saying to keep me from becoming conceited. Okay, what happened here? Well, if you read in the beginning of chapter 12, it starts talking about how, Paul's talking about this man, how he went up to like the third heaven or something and, got these revelations directly from God. And most commenters think that man that Paul was referring to is actually himself. But he was trying to not refer to himself to keep himself from becoming conceited. Because think about it, if you had this special encounter with God, that was only just you and God had, you'd probably be feeling pretty good about yourself. Like, I have a special relationship with God that none of you guys have. And so here, he's kind of coming down from that mountaintop experience. And here he's saying to keep me from becoming conceited. Because here, if he's saying to keep me from becoming conceited, you can tell that he's being tempted with what? Conceit. And in 1 Timothy 3:6, it's talking about the elders in the church and, appointing elders. But here it talks about how to become conceited is to fall under the same judgment as Satan.
Wow.
Because we all know what cast Satan down from heaven.
Pride.
It was his pride. I want to be God. I want to be a God. And so we see that this is a big deal. But it says here that to keep him from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. I don't know about you guys, but does that sound fun? Like, does that sound like something that you would want? Are you guys, how has your week been going? Have you been feeling tormented lately? Yes, here, Paul is saying that this is actually God's mercy. To have this thorn. And technically it's from Satan, yes, because every good and perfect gift comes from the Father, but it's also from God, because God is allowing Satan to torment. And it's by God's permission. And you think about with Job, if any of you guys know the story of Job, Job went through a lot. He went through more than prayerfully any of us will ever have to go through. But all of it was because Satan came up to God and was like, God, may I tempt Job? And God allowed it. But it's interesting because if we keep reading, it says in verse 8, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Why did God allow this thorn to be given to Paul? It was so that to force him to rely on God. This was actually God's mercy. Because what cast Satan out from heaven was because he didn't want to rely on God. He wanted to be his own God. And so you see that when this thorn came in, it really actually saved Paul.
Wow.
But the thing is, was Paul okay? Or was he exactly excited about this lavish grace of God that God had lavished on him? No. You know, and here it says he pleaded with God 3 times. So he got the answer no the first time. So he's like, I didn't hear that. Okay, can I please get this taken away? God said no again. And so he pleaded multiple times. You can tell he really did not want this.
Yeah.
Whatever this thorn was. Many people think that, you know, it was a medical condition. Some people think, commentators think that Paul was partially blind. There's many different ideas of what this thorn could have been that was tormenting Paul. But there's still no, there's no, absolute about that. But it's interesting because God's answer wasn't the answer that he wanted. And and it's interesting because sometimes when God doesn't give me the answers I want, sometimes I can think, oh God, you're not even answering my prayers. You don't even hear me.
Wow.
But the thing is, God always answers our prayers. But sometimes he doesn't answer it with the way that we want him to.
Yeah, come on.
I would be lying if I was always initially okay with how God answered my prayers personally. Because sometimes the answers I don't want to agree with.
Yeah.
But usually in these circumstances where I feel uncomfortable, pain, weak, I just want to pray a prayer for deliverance. Get me out of this situation. Take this thorn away. Give me healing. I need healing from this sickness. Or take away my fears. Or get me away from my weaknesses. Make me bold. It's interesting because we want to try to have a life void of all these things. Because here he says in verse 10, that is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insult, in hardship, in persecution, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
Wow.
These are the things I try to avoid in life.
Yeah.
I don't like difficulties. Yeah. I don't like it when people don't like me and insult me. Yeah. These aren't things that naturally in my flesh, I want to live a comfortable life. Yeah. If I'm just really honest. So these things, when he says to delight in them, it's like, okay, what planet are you from?
Yeah.
Are you human? But the thing is, why? Why? And that's what we're going to really talk about tonight. Yeah. Because here's the challenge. It's a challenging concept, but really, once we get past it, it can be the most liberating concept.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not about how awesome we are or we can try to seem. Oftentimes, we can try to seem like we aren't weak.
Yeah.
We can try to seem like sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
We can try to seem like, that we, aren't going through hardships and try to have it all together. Yeah. But the thing is here, the way that Paul is talking about it, he's saying really, actually, all this bad stuff about you actually can become what is actually good about you.
Yeah.
Because of weakness, we get God's power. Because true strength comes from humility and reliance on God.
Come on.
And so the first point I want to talk about is delighting in weaknesses. If we turn to 1 John chapter 1.
Come on, Jess.
Come on, Jess. Come on, Jess. Come on, Jess.
And in 1 John chapter 1, in verse 5, it says, "This is the message we have heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. If we claim to have fellowship with him and yet walk in darkness, we lie and do not live out the truth. But if we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. And the blood of Jesus, his son, purifies us from all sin. If we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. If we claim we have not sinned, we have made him out to be a liar, and his word is not in us." We don't have to be a skilled theologian to know that everybody sins.
Yeah.
I mean, just look in the mirror. You sin.
Yeah.
Look to your left. Yes, that person sins.
Yeah.
Look to your right. That person sins. We all sin.
Yeah.
And we think the so we can look silly when we confess our sin. Like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one.
Yeah.
This is this is embarrassing. Yeah, definitely. But we all sin.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we silly? We're not different.
Yeah.
You know? In that. And so, and it actually, if you really think about it, when somebody comes up to you and is like, hey, I need to just get open with you. Here's my sin. And they tell you something super personal. How do you feel at that moment?
Feel closer to them.
I feel super endeared to them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am honored. You think you trust me?
Yeah.
Like, and then also I'm like, yes, I'm not the only one that's struggling. You know, I'm not the only one in the battle. You know, and it's really interesting, you know, when people ask like, oh, what's your favorite sermon? Or, you know, who's your favorite preacher? If I'm really honest, I love preachers that are super vulnerable about their life. They're ones that are talking very, very openly about this is my sin, this is my immorality, this is whatever. And they talk very, very explicitly, but then they share their victory story. Because there's just something endearing about seeing like, wow, we're not the only ones.
Come on, Jess.
And we're admitting our weaknesses.
Come on, Jess.
Because to be honest, no one wants to hear everything is awesome sermon.
Yeah.
You know, those ones personally, those ones actually really make me anxious because they make me feel like I just can never be perfect. I'm just not perfect and I'm never going to be awesome and I'm never going to be able to do this. But when people who I really respect show me their shortcomings, it really helps me to see like, wow, I can get through this with God.
Come on, Jess.
And I want to share with you a really fun story.
Come on, Jess.
It's really interesting. So basically it talks about how this guy, he was walking down the street and he falls in a hole. And a doctor comes up and the guy's like, hey, please help me. And the doctor looks at him and goes, let me write you a prescription. And he throws it in there and walks away. And the guy's like, okay. And then later a priest walks up and he's like, please help me. And the priest goes, I'll pray for you. And then walks away. Then this guy's friend comes. And he's like, please come help me out of this hole. And the friend goes, okay. And he jumps in with him.
Oh my God.
And the guy goes, are you an idiot? Why would you jump into this hole with me? Now we're both stuck. And he's like, no. I fell in this hole last week and I know the way out.
Oh.
You know? It's funny, but it's so true. You know, that's the way that we can help people.
Wow.
Come on, Jess.
Because I'll be honest, lately I've been feeling really weak.
Come on, Jess.
It's been really, really challenging.
Come on, Jess. I'm with you.
You know, you spend your life, you know, making disciples, right? Pouring your life out, sharing your faith, and having people after people sometimes, like, just don't even bother to listen to you, to treat you like dirt. Or you start studying the Bible with somebody and you give your heart to them and you become their friend. You start giving them pieces of your heart because you just love them. And in a blink of the eye, all of a sudden, they stop responding to your text messages. They start treating all those hours. You probably have spent, like, if I think about it, I probably spent, you know, tens of 20s of hours with people, and they'll just treat it like nothing. And you know, lately it's been really challenging because I know with the church right now, like we've had a lot of Bible studies, and I'm super proud of all of you.
Amen.
I'm super proud of everybody working so hard, pouring their life into these people. And sometimes we as a family, we pour our lives into each other. But when people fall away, that's the worst. That's the worst. I remember my best friend, she was in Boston, and we became so tight. I was able to help her become a Christian. And she, in her Counting the Cross study, was like, Jess, I want to be just like you. I'm going to follow you everywhere you go. I want to just learn from you. She would come over to my house. You know, I was thinking like, man, where were you? You would have been at my wedding a year ago if you were there. And it's crazy because she went on a Christmas break, and then all of a sudden, she was gone. She just left. And then she sent me a text like, hey, I don't believe in God anymore. I don't want to be a part of the church. I don't read my Bible anymore. Please don't contact me. And I was just like, are you serious? I'm your friend. God aside, I'm your friend.
Yeah.
You know, and so things like this can just make me feel very weak.
Yeah. Come on,
You know, but I
Jess.
have to remember that, you know what? Satan is on the attack and God is so sovereign.
Yeah.
That I'm doing this not for me to get a friend, but for people to make it to heaven.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this to glorify me, to make me feel like I'm accomplishing something. I'm doing this for God.
Yeah.
And in my weaknesses, I can be strong.
Come on,
with
Jess.
God. But I think about it, Satan is totally on the attack. You know, there's a guy, his name is Napoleon, and no, not Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, okay.
He says this quote, and it was like translated a bunch, so in paraphrase, he said, "Never stop your enemy when he is doing something useless."
Oh.
You think about it, why would Satan attack us if we're doing useless things? When we're doing things that aren't even hurting his kingdom.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's attacking shows that it's because we're making an impact.
Yeah, come on,
Because
Jess.
we're hurting his kingdom. We're literally going into his kingdom of evil and stealing the people out of his kingdom and bringing them to the kingdom of light.
That's awesome.
To
Come on,
bringing
Jess.
them to God.
Come on.
You know, and God is going to do great things. I think about it last week. We had over 60 people studying the Bible, wanting to become Christians, in a church of 45 disciples.
Wow.
That's incredible. That's more than one-to-one, like every person, not just stopping at, oh, I'm going to make one disciple. That they're going for glory.
Yeah.
They're going for the city. You know, and I think about Peter started that gladiator internship with actually just 8 guys, 8 brothers in their church. And he gave them the challenge to share their faith with 25 people every single day, just for Monday through Friday. And it's amazing because in the past 2 weeks, just these 8 guys have shared with over 2,000 people.
Wow.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. And you think about it, and if each member of us, outside of that 8, let's just say we were like, all we did was share with one person. And I know all of you guys are sharing with more than just one person a day, but let's just say we all just shared with one person a day. We can add on over 500 more in just 2 weeks.
Wow.
So that's over 2,500 people in just 2 weeks.
Wow.
You know, and so no wonder Satan's angry. No wonder Satan is not happy.
Yeah.
You know, and side note, Peter and I started doing the calculation. If everyone in the church shared with 5 people a day for a whole year, we would have over half of the city of Gainesville's population shared with.
Wow.
Just 5 people. That you could do in 10 minutes if you wanted to. But just think about it. Satan is not happy with that. And so what is he going to do? He's going to try to get us to delight, or he's going to try to get us to not delight in our weaknesses, to hate our weaknesses, and to be discouraged.
Come on, Jess.
Because great victory can cause Satan to distract us with hurts. And so that's why it's so important to go to God to get the strengthening that we need.
Yeah.
And point number 2, delighting in insults.
Come on, Jess.
Like I said earlier, have you guys heard that childhood rhyme? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. What the heck are they teaching kids?
Yeah.
That is the biggest lie ever.
Yeah.
That is not true. People can say things to you that you can remember for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think about the bullying. I didn't look up statistics and stuff like that, but bullying, even in just, like middle schools and stuff, is causing suicides like that.
Yeah.
That's not with sticks and stones, y'all.
Yeah.
This is with words.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but the thing is, what's interesting is Jesus was the only one ever to never deserve an insult because he was perfect.
Yeah.
He was the one who never deserved a criticism because he was always perfect. And because he was sinless, but yet he was the one who never retaliated.
Wow.
Let's turn to 1 Peter chapter 2.
Come on.
Come on, Jess.
Come on, Jess. Come on, Jess.
And in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 23, it says, when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. He had the power and really the right to do something when people were hurling their threats at him, because he didn't deserve them. And really, if you look at it, the only time that Jesus ever said something back to an accusation was really to Pilate when he was just clarifying. It really was. But other than that, people called Jesus demon-possessed and raving mad. He's like, okay.
Wow.
And John 6, everyone starts grumbling about Jesus, and starts to have issues with what his teaching is. And, Jesus, to console his disciples, he goes, hey, you guys want to leave too?
Wow.
Jesus wasn't afraid of insults.
Come on. That's awesome.
Even the most unjust insults.
Yeah.
We can get, as disciples, we can get so bent out of shape when people think wrong things
That's
about
true.
us.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there. That's not true.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have to realize that time is a great equalizer. God always exposes the truth.
Yeah.
And it's always good to, when people bring up accusations or insults against us, because we're not Jesus and we're not perfect, to take a step back. Okay, I know the way that they're saying this is not godly, but is there an element of truth that I can change so I can be more like Jesus in this? But at the end, it's not a time to retaliate. Because the best thing to really do in those moments when you feel like people are insulting you is to ask questions. Is to ask, so what made you feel that way? Help me understand. Because we think about it now, insults are really, in the sense, sin. Because it's very unloving. You're attacking somebody's character. But when we think about these insults, where do they usually come from? But hurt people. People who are hurt. And Yulia was right. The Bible talks about Satan, and he is the accuser. And so when we're accusing other people, who are we imitating?
Satan.
Do you guys want to imitate Satan?
No.
Because accusing people is satanic, guys. And so I really want to encourage you guys to really think before you share. But also, when we as disciples get hurt by someone, we need to be careful to not express our hurts in the form of an insult or an accusation. It's very biblical to bring up when you are hurt. It's very biblical to bring to the attention of somebody if you are hurt. Talks about it in Matthew. But there's a difference in how you can bring it up. Somebody who's an accusation, for example, let's say they would say, you don't care about me because you didn't answer my phone call. That's an accusation. That's an insult. Because they're assuming that person didn't care about them. Now, a godly way to bring that up would be to say, when you didn't answer my phone call, it made me feel like you didn't care about me. You see, you're not accusing them of not caring about you, but you're expressing how you felt. You're expressing the issue that has arisen. And so, because we have to remember that feelings are always valid. There's always a reason you're feeling things, and it's very valid. But we have to remember feelings are not always true. And so with non-disciples, though, sometimes you don't have that luxury where they'll try to be righteous in how they bring up their issue. And so they'll just bring it up in an insult. They'll just start attacking. And that's when it's so important to be close to the Lord to be able to handle these insults. Let's turn to Isaiah chapter 50.
Come on.
This is awesome.
And the reason I bring this up is it's because it's something that I've had to learn. Naturally, in my pride, I want to be perfect. I don't want anybody to have an issue with me, and so when they bring something up, I get defensive. But what's interesting in Isaiah chapter 50, in verse 4, it says, "The sovereign Lord has given me a well-instructed tongue, to know the word that sustains the weary. He wakens me morning by morning. He wakens my ear to listen like one being instructed. The sovereign Lord has opened my ears. I have not been rebellious. I have not turned away. I offered back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who pulled at my beard. I do not hide my face from mocking and spitting. Because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore, I have set my face like flint, and I know you will not be put to shame." Here it says that he has set my face like flint. We also see that same theme in Ezekiel chapter 3, when Ezekiel talks about how He will harden our foreheads to be harder than the obstinate people. When Ezekiel was going to preach to these obstinate people, God said, I will harden your foreheads so that you will be just as hard as they are.
Wow.
You know, but it's important to, yes, have a hard head when it comes to these insults that they just kind of, they come on and they bounce off. They don't penetrate our mind and start getting into our thoughts, getting into, oh my gosh, then who am I now? And am I really? And then you start having all these insecure thoughts. To be confident in the scriptures, to be confident in God. But it's important to keep your heart a heart of flesh. Yeah. Because also in Ezekiel, it talks about another hardening. And it actually talks about how our hardening of a heart and how God needs to soften it in Ezekiel 36. And so it's important that when these insults come, and usually it's always from usually non-Christians, or it's usually from people that sometimes we're trying to help or that are just in our lives, that we that we have a hard forehead, forehead of flint, but a soft heart. Yeah. And it's not the other way around, where we get a soft forehead, where all these insults start taking us to one all over the place, and our heart gets hard. Yeah. We start really, really resenting people for these insults. That we keep it biblical.
Come on, Jess. This is great. Wow.
And sometimes we can pray for God to take these insults away, but God usually answers by really just making us tougher than them. Yeah. You know, I think about it. I've been stood up in many Bible studies before, and my time is really busy. I mean, as y'all, as students, I don't know how, like, sometimes as students, you're really busy. I remember even when I worked full-time, I would work 8 to 5, and then I would have, an hour commute back, and then I would have another hour commute to get to Harvard, where I was where Peter and I were heading up a Bible talk. And so we would have very limited time to really study the Bible with people. And I remember getting there, and when people would stand me up, I would feel super insulted. I'd be like, you think that my time is not as important as yours, that you don't even have the decency to text me back and let me know that you're not going to be there? I would feel super insulted and very disrespected. And at times it would make me want to harden my heart towards the boss. You know what? Good luck. Good luck with your walk with God. I don't want to help you. But it's super wicked. Yeah. Super wicked. My heart started to become just as hard as theirs. Wow. Instead of my head becoming harder than their insults.
Wow. Come on, Jess.
And so, really, the way you get a forehead of flint is to have great quiet times and knowing God's word. In a sense, it's kind of like a parallel to Ephesians chapter 6 about the armor of God and how we need to take up our shield of faith. Well, where does faith come from, guys?
The word.
Hearing the word of God. And so if we're not hearing the word of God, we have no shield. And so therefore, when these insult arrows start coming at us, they're hitting our hearts. And every time they're hitting our hearts, it's getting harder and harder and harder. And so it's so important that we get this, that we put up our shield of faith in our times with God, and so that we can keep our security in God and not in how people think of us. Yeah. You think about Jesus, he was the most controversial man. Yeah. But he stayed confident because he had a shield of faith up in his times with God.
Come on.
Because reading keeps us having a soft heart towards God and the lost. But if I'm honest, it's a lot to say that we would delight in insults. Not just tolerate, but delight in insults. Yeah. But there will come a time, though, and, prayerfully, it's, either now or soon, that you will mature and that you'll start to actually appreciate insults. Because you'll start to see them as, wow, now I know where that person really stands. I know where that person's heart really is at. I understand. I know that they don't agree with me. And so I understand. There's no question about it. And so that you'll really start to appreciate in the sense because it's you getting to see where their heart is really at. So then you know where to help them. Yeah. Come on. Point number 3 is delighting in hardships. Let's turn to Hosea chapter 1.
Come on, Jess.
Come on, Jess. Go, sis.
And in Hosea chapter 1, in verse 2 it says, when the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, go marry a promiscuous woman and have children with her. For like an adulterous wife, this land is guilty of unfaithfulness to the Lord. So he married Gomer, daughter of Diddlam, and she conceived and bore him a son. And so, if any of you guys get some time, you need to read through the book of Hosea. Part of you is like wondering as you're reading through, it's like, I thought, God, you loved this man. Why would you have him go? And as the story goes, he marries a prostitute. And she has a couple sons. One is named actually Not Loved. And then another one ends up being named Not My People. And commentators say that the one that's named Not My People was actually a son that she bore to another man.
Wow.
But yet Hosea still took into his life.
Wow.
Why would God put Hosea through this and tell him specifically to marry a woman that was not going to be faithful to him? You know, it's the difference between a priest and a prophet. And we don't want to get them mixed up.
Yeah.
Because a priest, these were the people back in the Jewish times that they would be in the temples and people would bring their animals to sacrifice and they would kind of be the intermediator between the people and God. You know, and so they would actually get their livelihood by getting a portion of the sacrifice. It was biblical, it's not like they were stealing or anything, but that was God's plan so that the priest could be fully devoted to being priest. But nowadays, the Bible talks about in 1 Peter that we are the holy priesthood, God's special possession. We are the intermediators between God and the lost.
Yeah.
What an incredible job.
Yeah.
You know, but priests were very different than prophets. Because prophets, how did they help people? Well, a prophet, another word is a preacher, and they actually preached from experience, and God used their lives as examples to show the people how the people were being towards God.
Wow.
And so in Hosea's situation, God had him marry a prostitute to show how Israel was being unfaithful to God. So that when Hosea would preach that message that people needed to repent, that he would say, because I understand how much it hurts. I can understand how frustrating it is to love someone so much and they continue to prostitute themselves to other things. They continue to be unfaithful to me. Now Hosea is now preaching not out of just theory, but out of experience. You know, and we think about hardships. That's when God wants to use us to preach not just from theoretical ideas, but from experience, so we can really help people understand. Because you think about the prophets, some of them, they were taken care of really by just trusting God. The priests, they were just taken care of because that was just the tradition. You know, you bring your sacrifices, they get taken care of. Prophets, they just had to trust God. Like God called this one prophet, he's like, hey, you want food? Go over there by the brook and the ravens will feed you. Another one was like, hey, I want you to go and lay on your side for 390 days. And then I want you to cook your food over your excrement. Ew. But that was the life of a prophet.
Wow. Because
Because God knew people didn't want this theoretical message. But the messages that are preached best are the ones who are preached from experience.
Yeah. Come on.
You know, I think about, and I'm just really honest and open with you guys, you know, growing up, one of the things I heavily struggled with was depression. Depression is a real thing. I remember when I first heard about it, I wasn't personally dealing with it, and I was like, oh, it's just people feeling sad. Like, snap out of it. There's so much to be grateful for. But then going through it, I saw that it wasn't that easy. It even came into, you know, my discipleship where times would come where it's just I couldn't control it. You know, I also struggled a lot with social anxiety growing up, where even just simple conversations with people would just make my heart pound really, really fast, because I would just be thinking, okay, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? What are they thinking of me? How are they perceiving what I'm saying? Am I funny enough? Am I cool enough? These are all just thoughts, a million miles a minute in my mind, so I couldn't be relaxed in just simple conversations with people. And so I think that was one of the things that led into such a deep depression. And it also led into struggling a lot with different various eating disorders, because I was just so consumed with what people thought of me. I remember, you know, just simple things, and my specific eating disorder was really hard because it's called binging and purging. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's you binge, and so you binge eat. So you eat way more than what you need, almost to the point where you're sick, because you're just addicted to the feeling of food. There's many different reasons you go to food, but then you feel so guilty and you're so scared of gaining weight that you run straight to the bathroom and you force yourself to throw it all up. And it's just an endless cycle. And that's how you would eat. And so then I would go through different times of where I would struggle with anorexia, where for weeks on I would barely eat anything. But then I would binge super hardcore because I couldn't keep it up. You know, I just wasn't strong enough, and then it would lead to my depression. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm failing at this, all of this stuff. And, you know, and it also led to me just being so overwhelmed that I just felt like the only way to get out my frustrations was I would cut myself. I would just, and thinking back, you know, I used to think about, oh, I'll never get that far. I'll never get that depressed where I'll actually hurt myself. That's for people who are really have lost it. You know, and I'd look down on people. But when, like, I got to that point, I then understood, you know, and I look back at those times, and I'm not proud of them, but I'm very grateful. Because now I think about when I get to talk to people who struggle with these things, I'm not talking, oh, here's a couple scriptures, just snap out of it. Just repent. It's fine. No, I get it. I get it. It's hard. The battle in the mind is rough. Being a woman with our emotions is rough. But I can speak from a place of hope. Because through God, I was able to overcome. Amen. Through God, that's no longer me. And so now I can be able to speak from a place of hope. You know, not an intangible pedestal. And so I'm very grateful looking back on those times. I even look at my scars, and, you know, at first I'm like, man, those are my body for the rest of my life. But I look back at them now, and I'm like, I'm really grateful. Because that is the sign of God's promises and His goodness. And so I delight in those hardships now because of what it produced in.
Come on, Jess.
And then being able to preach a message that prayerfully will help other people to also one day be able to delight in their hardships.
Amen.
Point number 4, delighting in persecutions. You know, we were just in New York City, and New York City is a really interesting place to be. So we were just walking, and you see the most diverse people there. You see people, I saw people with rainbow hair. I saw people, you know, that were just wearing the weird, well, most different outfits. Outfits I never would see in Florida, probably. You see all these sorts of types of styles, but you also, it's a very diverse religiously. Luke was talking about how you'll even see people pulling out prayer rugs on the side of the street and doing their prayers, and just nobody cares because it's New York City. You know, people do what they do. There's such a diversity that it's just like, yeah, you do you. I'm gonna do me. You know, and so when you turn to Acts 28,
Come on, Jess. Come on, Jess. Come on, Jess. Come on, Jess.
and in Acts 28. In verse 21, it says, they replied, we have not received any letters from Judea concerning you, and none of our people who have come from there has reported or said anything bad about you. But we wanted to hear what your views are, for we know that people everywhere are talking against this sect. So for those of you who don't know, what really helped the first century church evangelize the world in that generation was persecution. It says here, people everywhere are talking against that sect. If you look up on Google, there's different words for the word sect. One of them is a cult. That's usually a scary trigger word. But that's what people are calling the church. But the thing is, people everywhere were talking about it. Maybe it wasn't in a negative light, but they were talking about it. And that's what made people start to get curious. And that's what made people start being like, what is this you got going on here? Who is this Jesus guy that everybody's making such a fuss about? You know, and so we think about, even in Gainesville, that's how persecution is going to help us really, truly evangelize Gainesville. Because you think about it, Jesus was one of the most controversial preachers ever to walk the face of the earth. Think about it. Nobody was indifferent about Jesus. People either wanted to die for him or wanted to watch him die. And so we think about, if we're preaching the same message as Jesus, how will people feel about our message? I sure hope they're not going to feel indifferent about it, because that means in some way we're not preaching the same message as Jesus. You know, I think about when I posted my picture on Facebook, I came from a super religious background where I was baptized as a baby in the Catholic Church, and then we went to more of a non-denominational church, and I got baptized again there, but I didn't really study out what it was biblically. And so when I made a stand, and I really saw my life, saw that I was not living as a true Christian, because I was very religious, but I was not righteous by all means. And when I saw what righteousness looks like according to the scriptures, not according to just my standard, because I thought I was righteous according to my standard. But I ended up getting baptized, praise God, you know, and I posted a picture online, and at the time I had just left a Bible school where I was training to be a pastor, where everybody had saw my original baptism at the church. And that was a really controversial picture. Even my mom was like, how many times did you get baptized? Like, what does this mean? And so many people were like, Jess, what are you doing? But it was so cool because I was like, well, I'm glad you asked. Because I was able to start sharing. And it was crazy because my best friend, who thought I was nuts, who thought I just lost my mind, she's like, how much more serious can you get about your relationship with God, Jess? Like, this is crazy. She ended up later becoming a disciple.
Wow.
She turned from a persecutor to a proclaimer.
Come on.
Persecution is really going to help spread the gospel. You know, and it may result in insults and more hardships. And many may not change their opinion, but we're just looking for the some. We're looking for the few that will. You know, because people need to know about us, because even here in Gainesville, there's so much false doctrine. You know, and our goal here as disciples isn't just to make a few disciples, but it's to change the city of Gainesville. And it's to help everybody to have a chance to hear the truth. You know, Chanel, some of you guys know her. She's super awesome. She said this really cool quote that said, we do our best and leave the results up to God. Our job is to proclaim. God's job is he's going to be the one that brings all the results. But we're just going to proclaim and do our best. And you think about it, persecution comes because we take a stand on something. You really think about a lot of these churches, it's called the Universalist Church, and basically they kind of don't stand for anything. They're kind of like, you believe in your own God, but you come and we all worship your own God together, and it's awesome. We talk about, you know, positive things, good energy. And we think about that now, we're like, wow, that's super far from the gospel. But you really think about it, a lot of these churches are going more so towards the Universalist movement. You know, all these different discrepancies about very clear scriptures. How do you be saved? You know, what is the stance on homosexuality? The Bible's super clear, you know, and yes, people have distorted it and have preached it in a very negative light, in a very ungodly way, but the truth still stands. And so if we don't stand for something, we're going to fall for everything. And we're going to fall just like Satan fell. And I want to stand on the truth.
Come on, Jess, that's awesome.
You know, because so many churches are trying to not be controversial. Guys, we can't be afraid to be controversial. We can't be afraid because Jesus was controversial. And if you don't want to be controversial, then you really don't want to follow the true Jesus of the Bible.
That's right.
I have to be honest with you. You know, are we out trying to make people angry and on purpose? No. But we got to preach the truth.
Amen. Come on, Jess.
And not apologize.
Come on, Jess. That's right.
And so, my last point is delighting in difficulties. You know, I talked about earlier how we're raising money for special missions. And our church has a goal of $17,000. Oh, baby. And some of us can think, that's a lot. I don't got for campus students, I think it's $500. You know, for the gladiators, they got $600. For the singles, you know, it's a little bit more than that. But, you know, it's never really a money issue. It's really a faith issue. Because if you think in Haggai 2, verse 8, it says, all the silver is mine and the gold is mine, declares the Lord Almighty. All the money is God's anyways. So why does he have us collect special missions? Because God doesn't need our money. Because like I said, it's a faith issue. Because how will we live a life of miracles if we're never in the need of one? How will we be able to live an extraordinary Christian life if we're never having extraordinary goals and we don't have extraordinary faith. You know?
Come on.
But difficulties always expose where our faith is at.
That's true.
Because difficulties cause us all to grow. Difficulties make us realize there's some part of our life that is not fully controlled.
Yeah.
And they cause us to have to rely on God. I think about some of the difficulties we can have in the church is, oh, there's no song leaders. Well, what's the problem? Or what's the answer to the problem? Well, some of you guys get to raise up and become new song leaders. And it may be difficult at a time, but it's worth it in the end. And I want to lift up Haley. She's been taking a stand and starting to come up and be a song leader. That's awesome. You're not hiding in the face of difficulties. You know, I think about, there's no one to lead that study I've never led before. Oh my gosh. But how are you going to learn?
Yeah.
If you never go through such a difficulty.
Yeah.
I want to lift up Rachel.
Rachel.
Like 10 minutes after the study was supposed to start, I was like, hey Rachel, I can't come anymore. I'm sick. I can't make it. And she's like, okay. She wasn't afraid of the difficulty ahead in the study that she had never fully led by herself, if I'm right. You know, and she did an amazing job. And that's how she's gonna grow. That's how she's gonna become a woman that's able to lead somebody, not just to the church study, but to counting the cost.
Yeah.
That's how she's gonna become a region leader one day.
Wow.
That's how she's gonna become a campus leader one day.
Wow.
Maybe she'll lead a church one day.
Wow.
Because she's not afraid of difficulties. And therefore she's not afraid of growth.
Yeah.
You know,
Come on, Jazz.
Because what difficult situation have you never been in before? Well, just see now you get to learn how to handle it.
Yeah.
You know, because we can't be afraid of making mistakes. We really can't, because mistakes lead us to learning. We learn, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
I don't remember who I was talking. I think I was talking to Angie, and I was like, hey, this is my plan. I don't know how it's going to go, but if it goes bad, I'm not going to do that again, you know, or something. And she was like, amen. Something like that. I don't remember exactly. But that's how we learn. That's how we grow.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about, too, you know, I love my husband.
Yeah.
He's awesome. But our relationship has not been butterflies and rainbows. It has not been perfect. I remember one cold winter night. It was snowing hardcore, and it was super late at night. I think it was like 2 a.m. We got in a fight, because usually the fights always have to happen at ungodly hours. And we started fighting, and I got so mad and so ticked off. I was like, you know what, I'm leaving. And I started storming out. I went to go grab my coat. I don't know where I'm going to go. It's 2 a.m. I'm so mad. And he's like, no, Jess, you're going to stay. And we ended up calling, and thank goodness for discipling and having people that were willing to pick up the phone and talk to us. Struggle people, but help us to become righteous so that we can work through our relationship. And to be honest, it's moments like that I look back, and we're laughing now, you know, but I look back and I smile because I'm like, wow, that's what made our relationship real.
Yeah.
That's what made our relationship valuable. Because if it were easy, it wouldn't be valuable.
Yeah.
You know, difficulties are only good when we choose to grow from them, though. You know, thinking about being a disciple is not easy. You know, and if you want an easy or even, you know, a kind of intermediate level life, you don't want to be a disciple. Because being a disciple is on level hard. On level difficult. All you gamers understand that if you're on level easy, it's kind of like, I just can't wait to get off this level and move up. And then you're on intermediate and you're like, I can't wait to move up. Why do you want to get to the hardest level? It's the hardest one. Isn't hard equal, like, not good? Like bad, negative? No. Because when you pass that hardest level, the victory is almost so much greater. You know, because it's so much more valuable. You know, and the reason I brought that up was thinking about Stevie, how she even shares her face while playing video games. I don't know how she does, because she's sold out. But really, when you think about it, you know, living as a disciple is the most rewarding life you will ever live. Is it hard and difficult? Absolutely. But it's a life that causes you to grow, and to not only just grow in worldly things, but to grow closer to God. You know, and the task that we have been called to, even as disciples, is very great. I mean, you think about the companies that are like, we're gonna get our brand across the world. People are like, yeah, woohoo, that's awesome. That's a big dream. Guys, we're going to evangelize the world.
Amen.
Do you really believe that?
Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
Woo, the task is great, and it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. We can't go trying to play on level easy and make it.
Yeah.
We have to be not afraid of level hard, of level difficult. Because the task is great, but the reward is so much greater.
Yeah.
I was thinking about drawing a line on this, and actually, no, I won't.
Yay.
So think about this. This is your eternity. So we're gonna put a little, and this is. I'm gonna tell there's a line here.
Come on, Jess.
Eternity, right?
Wow.
Compared to eternity, that is your life. Do you see that? Do you see that little break in eternity? It's so small. But yet that little break is going to be the most difficult and the hardest. It's going to be one of the most challenging times of your existence. But the thing is, that little blip, if you can make it through and stay faithful to God, the rest of all of eternity is bliss. With God. Worshiping God in heaven.
Wow.
Can I tell you how worth it is it, guys?
So worth it.
And so if we turn back to 2 Corinthians and close out in chapter 12, in verse 9 it says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong."
Amen.
Let's not just tolerate these things, but let's truly delight in them. For when we are weak, we are truly strong.
Yay.
God